After careful consideration, I decided that I cannot do John Carpenter's filmography without doing Halloween. So I am not saving it for my Halloween series. I'm doing it now. Now, when I first started this channel, this was the first film I did want to review. But I was a little nervous because I always felt like I didn't have all that much to add to it that hasn't already been said outside of my personal experience with it, which is what I will get into first. But I will talk about this movie. And strap in, people. We're going to be here a little while. This is John Carpenter's Halloween, my favorite film ever made. The movie that got me into horror. I saw this movie when I was 5 years old on a Betamax tape. And I fell in love, truly. I don't know if I was sick in the head. You know, something that I've pondered for many years and I've discussed with tons and tons of horror fans over the years is what gets us into this shit. You know, one common thread that I've noticed with the hardcore horror fans is that they started at a very young age, usually between the ages of like 4 to like 8, 9 years old. Somewhere in that area, people saw Nightmare on Elm Street, they saw Halloween, they saw whatever. And it just resonated with them and it worked, and they found themselves really enjoying dark material, and times were different back then. I mean, in the 80s, when I saw this, parents weren't as strict as they are now. They aren't as coddling, as protective. And they would let us watch Freddy and whatever. And so I watched this movie every night. Like, no shit. I watched this movie every fucking night. In fact, almost to an unhealthy obsession. Which brings me to my first story with this. I actually used to... I got a mask from the production manager on Halloween 4, Bucky Moore, property master. I say master. He gave it to me. I lived in Hollywood. Long story. I'll probably tell it in my Halloween 4 review. But he gave me this mask from Halloween 4, one of the masks that they used in the film. And this was in 1988, 89. I think it was in 89 because it was like a year after the movie. Coolest thing ever. I mean, no one has ever given me a better present, and I don't think anyone else ever could. But, I used to wear that thing all the time. I would sit out in the bushes, and I would just breathe in it, and I would watch the neighbors as they walked by, and people started to get very nervous, and they actually held a meeting. And they were, the people came and they told my mom, like, they were worried about me. They thought I was going to grow up to be a serial killer. And, my mother, I'm not going to try to get too much into that kind of stuff, but my mother really wasn't there. She was what she was. She wasn't that available. And so she just kind of whatever. And she rented me movies to kind of keep, watching the cable guy, I always kind of feel like that's a little bit of my childhood where it's like, his mother plops in front of the TV. That's his babysitter. Like, bye-bye. I'll rent you 4 or 5 movies a day. So it was horror. It was always horror. It was always horror. But I always watched this one. And it was so special to me. And I've seen it so many times. It's insane. So, of course, this was the film that I wanted to review more than anything. It just has such a place in my heart. Like, it is one of my great memories of my childhood. And that might be sad, but it's just true. It's something that got me through a very dark period of my life. And anyway, I don't want to get too into that, but the film means a lot to me. That is why Michael Myers will stay. He's got a blemish today. Looks like he's got a pimple. They're pretty red. But anyway, that's why he's the top. He's the crown. He's the king on the top of the food chain there. So anyway, let's get into the film itself. Why not? Now, something I find interesting to think about is that, like, when we watch films today, we don't think about the crowd in the theater watching this for the first time without anyone else ever knowing, and you know, not knowing what's going to happen. You know, I've seen this movie so many times that, like, it's just old hat to me. Like, for instance, when you watch Psycho, I think now, because it's so well known about Norman being the killer, that you don't really remember or think about the fact that people in the audience did not know. And when that scene happened, they were shocked. Like, that was a Sixth Sense ending for them. I mean, even Hitchcock went and bought every single copy of Psycho in town so that no one could read the book to not give away the secret. And I feel like that's the same thing here. Like, when I watched this opening, because this is one of the first times I've ever watched this with more of a critical eye so that I could discuss it, and wrote down like a whole page, the most notes I've ever written. And this was me trying my best not to write down everything. Did I need to watch this movie again to talk about it? No, I know every single line verbatim. So, but it was like, why would I pass up the opportunity to watch Halloween? But when I was watching it, I was thinking about how these people didn't know in the opening that infamous POV cam. I don't know if that was the first, I doubt it, but it definitely spawned a ton of ripoffs that every fucking slasher movie from here on had used POV cam for their killers. But I was thinking, like, no one in the theater knew this was a child doing this. Like, especially a child that young. So I was trying to put myself in this, you know, in 1978, sitting in the theater and watching this as an audience member, not knowing and being like, oh my God, when they pan back and it's this child, this innocent. And in the Blu-ray, he looks even more childish, like, because it's so crisp and clear. You can see how young this little kid is, and it's shocking, you know, when you're watching it and you don't know that's coming, for it to pan back. His parents don't seem to be all that miffed about it. They just stand there. I know it's for artistic purposes, like they just pan off and they're almost just frozen, freeze framed. But I'm always like, their parents have, like, in reality, obviously they would have ran in the house or been like, what the hell did you do? Or whatever. Or where was, you know, are you hurt? They probably would think like the kid grabbed the knife or, you know, whatever, if they see the bloody knife, like, oh my God, did you get hurt? Or they just do nothing. It's, you know, doesn't matter, but I always notice that every time. Now, this film just is filled with, like, the greatest ever for me. Like almost everything in the film is just like, this is the greatest ever. This is the greatest ever. So I don't want to become too redundant here, because I do think that Michael Myers is the greatest slasher villain of all time. You know, his mask is the greatest. The music for this is the greatest. Sam Loomis is the greatest. You know, all these kinds of things. I mean, list goes on and on and on. Literally, like, my favorite shot, my favorite scare, my favorite, like, everything is perfect in this film. It is perfection. Now, can I step back away from this and say, if I didn't have the nostalgia, if this wasn't my favorite film, if this wasn't, would all of these things still be the best? I was really trying to pay attention this time and be like, is this my favorite shot? Is this my favorite soundtrack? Is this my favorite character? Is this the favorite? Honestly, yes. I mean, really. And it's hard, obviously it's very hard for me to unbiasedly step away and watch it through fresh eyes or unbiased eyes. I get that, but I was really trying, and honestly, all these things. And the first thing I want to talk about in that is Dr. Sam Loomis. I mean, Donald Pleasance was on set for 3 days. 3 fucking days. And he gives the most iconic performance in horror history to me. I mean, Sam Loomis is the greatest character in horror for me. Like, there's just something so compelling about the man. He demands your attention every time he speaks. No, every time he speaks, it kind of reminds me of, you know, when Quint is doing his USS Indianapolis story in Jaws. Like that moment where everyone's just fixated on him and he's just telling this incredible stuff. Like that's every word out of Donald Pleasance's mouth in this movie to me. Like every fucking time he talks, especially when he's talking to Brackett, like all this stuff he says about the devil's eyes and, you know, watching him for 15 years, staring at the wall, staring past the wall, staring at this night, inhumanly patient. Like every line he delivers is incredible. The fact that he walked onto this film, like Donald Pleasance was a guy who was making films like right and left and blah, blah, blah. He never knew that this was going to be his, you know, career-defining film. This is the film that he will always be remembered for. And this guy he was in hundreds of films over his years, and a lot of them were horror. He's a horror legend, but this is the one. When you bring up Donald Pleasance, Halloween, Sam Loomis, like I don't think he knew. It was probably just like another film he was stopping by, and it was like, really? That one hit? Oh, I thought I gave other good performances, and I didn't realize this was going to be that popular. Like nobody knew, obviously. But God, he's so great in this fucking movie. And I love like how he thinks about Michael not being a human being anymore. Like he refers to him as it. He refers to him as the evil. Although when he does go to his sister's grave, Judith Meyer's grave, he does refer to him as a he. Like he keeps correcting everybody that he's not. It's like you talk about him as if he was still a man. That part of him died years ago. Like he does once call him he. He's like he came home. So that's a little odd. But I guess probably the line. That's the tagline for the film. I mean, the night he came home. Is it on here? Yeah, it is. But the line works. It's just that throughout the rest of the film, it's the evil and it. And I like that. I like that Loomis seems to be the only one that's aware of how fucking evil Michael Myers is. Like he is gone. There is nobody left. Like, you know, doctors always go in there and they're trying to find the patient and this and that. And Loomis knows better. He's seen it all, and he has found pure evil incarnate here. The little boy that once was is completely gone. And I just love the way he talks about him in this movie. And Michael lurking in this film, in the openings, you know, when he's behind the bush and he's out in the backyard and when he's outside the classroom, and that shit is eerie. He does it throughout the entire film. He's just a lurker. But rarely do we get those kinds of shots in broad daylight. Like he is stalking her from like 8 a.m. till like 10 p.m. all damn day. And we just get these little glimpses of him here and there, you know. And this mask in this movie is perfection. I heard that they did, you know, they had a clown mask and they had this one, and they like walked out of the bathroom and they showed the clown mask and they're like, oh, that's kind of creepy. And then they walked out of the bathroom with this one, and it was like, boom, like everyone was like, that's it. That's the mask. And when you see it, you understand why. It is terrifying. It is just this blank, pale, emotionless face with the blackest eyes. No, for real though, it's like he's embodying what he is inside. He's just emotionless. And oh god, I can't talk highly enough about this damn movie. Now I like to think about, because I'm not a big fan of the brother sister thing in part 2. I'm not going to talk much about the sequels here. I could talk about the spin-offs of all these characters and what they become in the future, and Ben Tramer getting hit by the whatever. But when I focus on this movie, because I do believe that this is just me speculating here, but I do believe that because of The Empire Strikes Back in 1980, while John Carpenter and them were writing the script for it, and the whole, you know, I am your father line, and everyone was like, oh my god, I feel like they threw in the relation thing to be the big, like, oh my god, they're related, this is crazy, this is like Empire Strikes Back insanity. I don't like it. I accept it, when I watch the sequels and whatnot. But when I watch this one, I don't like to think of them as brother and sister. I just don't. I don't like Luke and Leia being brother and sister either. But I don't care for it. So when I start to think about it, what would the reasonings be? Like if they just made part 1 and we never got any sequels, or if the sequel, they never addressed brother-sister thing. What would be the reasoning for why Michael picks Laurie Strode? And, what I've always thought is she's the one who garnishes his attention. Like, she walks up to his house and disturbs his like sacred ground. Like this is his house. Why is this bitch on my porch? And throughout the film, Michael is he just sits back and he's more of like a voyeur. He's more, obsessed with watching people. Like, he could kill all of them at any moment. Like, he could have just stopped the car, got out, and stabbed Laurie to death. Or he could have ran out of the house and killed her right there on the porch. But he didn't. What he did is not only did he follow her, but he followed her all day, and he found out who her friends were. He found out who she was babysitting. And he followed the kid to school. And he waited for him to get off of school and followed him around. Then he followed her friends. Then he killed her friends. Like, he's been watching all day. And he watches them have sex, and he watches them get undressed, and he watches them interact, and it's almost like he's trying to somehow live vicariously through them in a way, and then eventually does what he does and kills them. It's weird to think about, like, if you take the brother sister, and of course if you do that too, like, let's throw the brother sister stupid thing in. Like, why does he kill her friends? Why doesn't he just kill her, like, right out the gate? Like, why doesn't he just go for her and her alone? Like, there's another one that's like, I don't know, like, Annie and Linda and Bob are across the street. Like, why even kill them? What do they even have to do with anything? So the whole brother-sister thing for me kind of throws that off. Like, he wants to kill not only her, but everyone she has interactions with. And I guess that works for the brother-sister thing too, but I don't know. I just never have liked it. Anyway, okay. I've rambled about that for too long. As I said, this is going to go on for a while. So this might be one you're going to have to pause or just outright ignore because I'm yapping. One thing I do want to talk about here is I have a huge crush on Annie Brackett. I always have. She, to me, is like the George Harrison of Halloween. Like, no one ever talks about her. They either talk about Jamie Lee Curtis or they talk about, Linda, PJ Souls. But Annie never really gets any attention. And I've just always thought she was beautiful. And I really like her spunk and her sarcasm. And I just think she is wonderful. I also am a huge fan of curly hair. So she just... And maybe it's because of Annie that I have a thing for girls with curly hair. But yeah, Annie. Anybody with me on that? Annie Brackett. When Laurie and Linda are walking away from this high school, you hear the cheerleaders in the background cheering and practicing. I'm curious on why Linda isn't back there with them. She's talking about how she has 2 cheers to learn in the morning and 2 cheers to learn at night and whatnot. And it's like, aren't they back there learning them right now? Like, what are you doing? Maybe that's a different squad, or maybe that's like the flag team, or maybe whatever. Maybe that's just a bunch of them. But I've always noticed that, like, Linda, shouldn't you be like... and Sheriff Brackett in this movie, just that little interaction he has with Laurie Strode. I'm just reading into things, and I call a lot of people in this movie pervy. Michael Myers as well. He's always watching people, like... He watches Annie get naked, and he watches Linda and Bob fuck. So he's a little creep. He's a little pervy. But yeah, something about his interaction with Laurie Strode, when she bumps into him, he's just very, like, pervy about it, like creepy. Like, his looks on his face, he's like, "Excuse me, Laurie. Well, I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare. Like, I don't know. I'm just reading into it, but I've always found, like, since I was a kid, I was just like, why is he looking at her like that? She even mentions later, like, did you see the way he looked? And his daughter's like, he always looks like that. And it's like, he always looks pervy. And anybody else, like, crazy over this whole Charlie Bull story, like, over in Russellville? Loomis interrupts him, and I want to know what he did. Okay, I want to know what he did. He went over and he got himself a hacksaw, and he proceeded to what? I need to know. I've always wanted to write the Charlie Bull story over in Russellville. Like, that's one of the scripts I've always wanted to write. Just get that, little spin-off movie and find out what Charlie Bowles did with that hacksaw and his family. Did he chop him up? Did he go out and leave his family? He kissed his wife and his children goodbye? Like, did he kiss them goodbye because he went in the house and he killed them? Or did he kiss them goodbye because he left the house and killed a bunch of people and they never saw him again? I need to know. Anybody else? Okay. I've watched this movie way too many fucking times. And another thing that just is hilarious to me, I mentioned this in my walkthrough when I went and saw the Myers house and the hardware store and the Doyle and the Wallace place. If you haven't seen that, I went to all the famous horror locations in California. Well, not all of them, but a ton of them. But the response time of the Haddonfield Police Department is hilarious. Michael Myers breaks into the hardware store before 8 a.m. Like, he has the mask on when Lori goes to drop the keys off at the Myers place. So he's already robbed the hardware store by then. Annie comes to pick her up at 6 p.m. at night. They drive around smoking pot for a little bit, and then they drive past at, 6:15, 6:20, 6:30. And Sheriff Brackett and his little lugs are sitting there, and they finally get the alarm to go off. Oh my God. What is that, a 10-hour response time? Jesus, you could rob every bank in town and sit out front and have a margarita and relax. Cops ain't ever coming. No wonder they fucking let Michael Myers kill everyone in town. They're terrible. When Loomis is upstairs in the Myers house and the little, gutter comes down and breaks the window, like, Loomis is on the draw, man. He pulls that gun out, like, quick. He is ready, and Brackett's like, no! I always thought that was funny to me. Like, here's the sheriff, the guy who's supposed to be protecting the town, and his response is like, oh no! And Loomis is just like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And then he has to explain himself, like, oh, I'm jumpy. It's like, shouldn't you be the one with the gun out? And yeah, I mean, as I was saying earlier, like, Dr. Loomis's monologue in that moment, right before the thing breaks with the devil's eyes and all that, is my favorite monologue ever. So I didn't want to be redundant here, but Jesus God, it's so good. And why didn't Sheriff Brackett? I mean, obviously he's not taking Loomis very seriously, but there is a moment where he's like, but if this is true, damn you for letting him go. It's like, why? I have 2 daughters. They are my world. Like, as soon as I heard there was a serial killer on the loose that this guy is saying is evil incarnate, my first fucking action would be like, where is my daughter? And she is sitting in my car with me. I will duct tape her to my fucking side. She will not leave. I will handcuff her. That's probably more practical because, not the hand I shoot with, obviously. But right there, Annie would be right there next to me. So when he blames him in the next one, I'm kind of like, you should have got her, man. Like, you should have went and got your daughter. Come on now. You didn't even call her to be like, there's a psycho on the loose, possibly. Man, he set her up for death. Michael kills a dog in this. Never been fond of that. Never, ever, ever. Poor Lester. Michael kills a lot of dogs, man. Michael's the dog killer. Poor Max. All of them. And, oh yeah, Sunday as well. Poor little Sunday. Michael, you fucking dog killer. And of course, I mean, it's always worth mentioning that the movie has The Thing in it. That's just crazy. I know that Howard Hawks is like John Carpenter's fucking favorite, so it makes sense that he went and he put this in the film because he could, because it's like his hero, and he ended up making it. And the one scene they show is like the one scene he perfectly recreated with The Thing. And we have Annie using way too much Tide for 2 items of clothes. Yes, I pointed that out. And Annie's death not taking place till 54 minutes into the film. God, like, you just couldn't make a film like this today. Our audience today has no attention span. In fact, I'm probably talking to nobody right now because no one's watching this. Because nobody has an attention span to sit and listen to a guy talk about a fucking movie that everyone's seen a billion times and listen to a million things on for 25 fucking minutes. Anyway, but Annie breaks the fourth wall in this a little bit. She actually looks at the camera, almost at the audience, like, wait a minute, wasn't the door already locked, and why is this fogged up in here? I always thought that was an interesting choice, to have her look at the camera like, hey, did you guys notice this? It's an odd moment. Really doesn't fit the film, honestly, but I guess she's not looking at us. I don't know why she looked over at the passenger seat, but yeah, it's just an odd moment. There's so many great shots in this movie. God! One of my favorites is Tommy playing, hide and seek with Lindsay. And he looks out and he sees Michael carrying Annie's body. That is terrifying. As a child, that would fuck him up for life. I mean, Paul Rudd's character later is basically what he would have become. But I just love that shot. There's so many fan-fucking-tastic shots. Another one that I just adore is when, through the exact same window, Laurie Strode looks over across at the Wallace house, and the lights go on and off after she gets the phone call from Linda. Like, I just love that shot. It's so eerie. It's so creepy. Like, he turns the lights on and off a couple times. It's just so effective. It's settled. That's just it. That's what's so fucking fantastic about this movie. There's such subtle horror in it. Yes, there's a couple little pop-up things here and there, but a ton of the scares and the gags and the stuff with Michael Myers are so subtle. Long shots, like far away shots, like as I said, when he's watching Michael carry her across, or when Michael's face comes just into the light, or so many incredible scenes, or like when Michael's walking up the stairs in the background, when Laurie is talking to Tommy and Lindsay there. Like, you just see him walking up the stairs and you see his shadow and he hits the top of the stairs, and it's so subtle. Like, you can just see it and you're like terrified. Was that him? Oh, fuck. And then it just pans up quick and there's his face and he's just like, dun. It's fucking incredible. God, this movie's perfect. Anyway, I think I like this movie. Bob is a little weird that Bob, during his kind of foreplay moments with Linda here, makes a real pervy comment. Yet again, another pervy moment in the film about ripping the clothes off of Lindsay, like the little 9-10-year-old girl that she's babysitting. Like, that's not really what gets girls in the mood, but Linda is totally hot for him at that moment. It is weird. It's just like, first I rip your clothes off, then we rip Lindsay's clothes off, and she's like, oh yeah, totally. It's like, just talk about ripping the clothes off of a child while you're doing sexual acts. Like, that's not, that's some, all right. Anyway. And I mean, Linda and Bob really just have no respect for anything. Not only is he talking about fucking ripping the clothes off a child, but they go upstairs in a stranger's house and fuck in their bed with like no regard for anything. Like, we're going to fuck in your bed. We're going to lay beer cans all over the floor. We're going to ignore phone calls, pick it up, take it off the hook. Now, if you're going to take the phone off the hook, you might want to check for a dial tone, because they may have called back instantly after the phone stopped ringing, and when he took it off, they could have been on the line and listening to them fuck. So, Bob, next time... Oh, wait. I guess there won't be a next time for you. But if there was a next time, you probably should have listened. As I said, I've seen this movie too many goddamn times. And what's up with the girls in this movie? They seem to be just so easy to please. You've got Judith in the opening, who's fucked in, what, 1 second? I mean, her and her boyfriend go upstairs for 2 seconds. I mean, this is a scene that everyone talks about. It's the fastest sex scene in the history. I can't even imagine what they were thinking writing this thing. Like, well, we don't really have much time. We'll move the camera really slow. We got to make it seem like they could have sex. They couldn't fucking have sex. I mean, I know guys are quick at that age, but damn. And then later in the movie, Linda, like, he takes the phone off the hook, he rolls over on Linda, and we see in real time how much time he has to do it to her. It's like, what, 10 seconds maybe? And he rolls off of her, and she's like, fantastic. And she's like, oh, and he's like, yeah, you know, right? And it's like, 10 seconds? Oh my God, these chicks are easy to please. I need to move to Haddonfield. I'd be a god. And we've got, why does Michael wear the sheet? That's an odd scene as well. Like, when I really sit and I try to think of like an in-universe explanation for why the hell Michael Myers would throw on the sheet. Why not just come up? But he kind of fucks with people. You know, like he hides in the closet from Bob. He could have just axed everybody, but he's just, I don't know. Yeah, it's odd. It's odd to think of. Why does he wear the sheet, I wonder? So he can see some more of Linda's titties before he kills her? I don't know. Like, I literally can't come up with any reason. I mean, he just, maybe it's in an attempt to get her to talk to him in a way, like to have some kind of an interaction with somebody. I don't know. I'm just stretching here, but it's an odd scene. It's like, why did he put that in? It's effective. It's great. I love it. And we do get one of the coolest shots in the movie yet again, where she pulls the thing off of him, and we get the close-up, the real close-up finally of the mask, and he puts it up, and it's all in like blue lighting, and he's listening. That shot of that mask and the phone, man, it's like my second favorite shot in the film. But yeah, just why does he wear the sheet? I don't understand. And Loomis finally seeing the car. He's been sitting there for like 2 hours, and Loomis is kind of a little sadistic at a time. You know, like the only time you see any kind, a semblance of happiness or anything, is Loomis smiling because he just scared the shit out of children by scaring Lonnie Elam off with his friends. But he looks back and he sees this car, and it's like, you've been there for fucking ever, man. Like, really? Like, you didn't see that car? It's right down the street? That's silly. Like, that must have been, like, in writing, they were like, well, shit, we already have it almost completely written. How do we get Loomis over to the house? Oh, fuck, I don't know. How about he just sees the car over there? It just seems like such a last-minute decision, but whatever. And Judith Myers' birthday on her tombstone is the same as my mother's. I thought that was ironic. And the chase scene in this movie, once Laurie discovers the bodies, which conveniently seem to fall into place like every horror movie ever, which is silly, but who cares? That chase scene, when he comes out till Michael is shot and falls off, and even when they discover his body isn't there anymore, from that moment on, the film is fucking relentless. Like, it is terrifying. Do I get really scared anymore? Did I ever? I don't know. But no, of course not. But when I really sit back and I objectively watch it, it is a terrifying last act. Like, it's basically almost the entire last act. It's crazy. It is relentless. I remember that Roger Ebert said it was like the most relentless, merciless thriller he'd ever seen, or one of the most whatever. The perfect description. Relentless. Like, that last act with Michael chasing after her, he is relentless. He is not giving up. She has to stab him so many times, and it gets annoying. Michael has the worst aim ever when it comes to Laurie's throat. Stabs her in the arm, then misses her and stabs her in the couch, then drops his knife. He is a klutz around her, you know. And she just, I get it. Like, she's a kid. She's not going to fucking just pick up the knife and stab him to death. That's just not what a kid would do. So I can excuse it. You are screaming at the screen in moments like, Laurie, fucking the second time, fucking stabbed the guy to death. But I mean, she stabbed that dude basically in the heart. Like, she picks up the knife after, you know, getting herself out with that hanger, which is impressive to think on the fly like that. I'd like to see what you'd do in that situation. I sure wouldn't think of that. I'd just be like, all right, I'm dead. But she boom, boom, boom. But yeah, I mean, she fucking right in the chest. Ugh, the solar plex. What a terrible place to get stabbed. And then him sitting up, just, as I said, relentless. Perfect word there. And then Loomis comes in, shoots him. I love this when he falls off the porch. The second one has the stupidest re-edit where he like walks up with stuntman thing. I hate that. I don't know why they fucking did that. There's a lot of problems I have in the opening of the first one, or the second one, that they changed here, but whatever. It is what it is. And I say whatever a lot in these, but it's kind of just all I can say. It's like, whatever. Those are things that you just have to look past. So when I say whatever, that's all I can say. And I do love that he, and my favorite fucking scene, I almost skipped over this, but my favorite shot in this movie and in any horror movie ever is when Laurie is at the door and she's trying to get Tommy to come down, and she looks across the street and Michael is walking at her and he walks across the street. Greatest shot ever. It's terrifying. I love it. And I love that this film ends not on a final scare, like they think the killer's dead and then he jumps up and he scares her or whatever. No, like he's just out there. And that's what horror movies are all about. They're supposed to follow you home. They're supposed to make you scared once you leave the theater. Like, horror movies today are more about scaring you in theater. Like, in the moment, you are in the theater and everything's popping up and you're and it's all like natural reactions to having things thrown at you. If I took something and I threw it at your face and you went, oh my God, like you went and blocked it or whatever, that isn't scaring you. That is your body's natural reaction to having something thrown at it. That's just cheap. You know, I'm not knocking them. I don't care about that stuff. But these films, Halloween, The Shining, stuff like that, they get in your soul. You take them home with you, you know. And to end this movie with like every shot of the houses and all this, and you can hear Michael's breathing. Like, he's out there. He's somewhere. You don't know where, but that guy's still out there. And when you leave the house, or when you leave the theater and you go home and you're driving and you get in the house and all that stuff, your brain, even though you know it's fictional, is like, he's still out there. It's irrational, but that's what it is. That's what these movies do. Some people think that's crazy to think, like, why would that be entertaining? Why would I want to think that? But some of us are just sick, and we like that shit. And this movie is so effective in every fucking way. If you've made it this far, thank you for joining me. I've talked for almost as length of half the film, but I could easily go on for another hour. I've been talking about the movie for 30 fucking years, so I could talk about it in depth, in length, forever. But I will end it here. Yeah, Halloween, man. What more can I say about it? Greatest fucking horror movie ever made, hands down. Should I say my favorite? The Thing, I think, is the greatest. But we're going to get to that here. So, anyway, guys, on to the next.